Welcome to another episode of the Soul Sovereignty and Sexuality Podcast with myself, Jessica Falcon, International Soul Healer and Embodiment Guide, recording from Pompeii, Italy today. I arrived here a few days ago and it's been an absolutely amazing experience. I'm going to talk more about Pompeii next week in the episode. So stay tuned for that on sacred sexuality. This week, I want to talk about anchoring our light and a little bit more about the temples of Malta. I spoke in the last podcast episode about Malta and introduced primarily when the temples were built because they predate the Egyptian pyramids, and the timing of the temples in the context of the formation of our collective belief system that we tend to take for granted today. Because sovereignty requires that we question everything we have been told and align it to our inner soul truth, right? Which is really about looking within instead of looking out for our truth. And sometimes helps to do that when we realize there's so much more to the world than meets the eye, and many things are not the way we have been told that they are. Now, anchoring your light is an episode that I think is, there's so much to say about this. It's at the heart of everything I do with my clients is anchoring your light, right? Anchoring your soul light into your body so that you live as the divine being you are. You embody the God goddess you are. And that is the reclamation of your sovereignty. That is how you experience true freedom that is not contingent on external circumstance. And so this is a very, very small piece of that. But it was inspired, one, because of the election and what I'm hearing from people about their fears and concerns, and inspired also by my experience in Malta, on the island of Malta, exploring the temples there. And there's a correlation, and I don't think it's a coincidence that I was in Malta at the time of the election with these ancient temples receiving their ancient wisdom and the ancient codes available there, which are all about anchoring your light at the time this is happening in the United States. And I know that the entire world is affected by the election, regardless of whether you live in the US, because believe me, as I'm traveling, that's one of the very first questions people ask about the election. So, anchoring your light. What does that really mean in a nutshell? And I'm going to talk about how, right? And how this relates to the temples. It is you accessing the light of your soul, which is the light of the divine that you are. I believe, this is how I kind of visualize it, you can take it or leave it, that there's one light of source, right? You can call it God, source, whatever you want to call it. And that this light begins to grow and expand like the sun. And then as it shines its rays, right, we are that ray, right? We are from that source light. And that source light is contained within each human being around the world, within each animal, within each plant, within all of life. That's part of the ancient wisdom that they understood, the interconnection of all things. And as we start to access this light within us, of source, of God, we can then radiate this light into our thoughts, our beliefs, into our emotions, into our choices, into our actions, into our body. And as we radiate more of our light, we enlighten, we bring light to all these aspects of ourselves. It has no choice but to dispel the darkness. It has no choice but to bring to consciousness that which is not of the light, that which is not aligned to soul, that which is not aligned to source. Again, this is a multi-layered discussion because everything ultimately is of source. You can't not be of source, but you can be blind to the fact that you are one with source. You can be blind to the fact that you are, for example, interconnected with all things. You can be in the ego mind, which believes it's separate, believes it's alone, and believes that it is nothing but pure physical matter, and that there's no life force radiating, that there's no soul. Okay, we've been living, quite frankly, under a belief system for many thousands of years that denies the soul in the body or says that God is only outside of us. And so we have to get salvation from this external God in order to be saved, in order to be free, in order to be worthy. Soul embodiment and anchoring your light is the opposite. It is the light actually is you, is within you. You are of the light. You are of source. You are one with that. And therefore, to anchor that light is to anchor that knowing of your divinity within your own self, body, and earth, which has massive effect on the consciousness of this planet. Regardless of who's in office, regardless of what's happening in the world. Because the reality is that your experience is shaped by what you are focusing on, which is either the external or the internal. You are focusing on the external world to give you a sense of safety or worth or joy or freedom or value or any of that. Then you can easily get wrapped up in external events and what's going on, what other people are saying, what other people are doing, and your nervous system responds to that state of fear or anxiety or worry. Or you can keep your attention on your internal state, which is your heart, which is your divinity, which is your own knowing, your own truth coming within you, from within you. And then you can radiate this outward so that you are harnessing a state of joy, a state of peace, and a state of freedom that is not contingent on the external circumstance or event happening around you. That is the inner work of anchoring your light, is to allow your divinity and your light to be what creates and directs your experience of the world versus, say, taking in, let's call it the darkness of the world. There was not always dark. There's so much deliciousness and juiciness and beauty here. But let's say the darkness of the world, or what you see happening around you that feels dark, taking that in, making it yours, right? And then you kind of get that contracted, smaller state, or fear-based, or worry-based, anxiety-based. But then what's happening to your light? The focus and anchoring your light is to shine your light through and out of you, radiating your light out like a star, like a sun. And then you shining your light outward can create a different reality or result, because that light is the light of your divinity, which knows way more than your soul, your mind can ever know. Your soul knows way more than you could ever grasp with your mental mind. And so that shining of that light, the radiating of that light creates magic and miracles, because that light is radiating through the interconnected web of all things and then attracting other light and attracting other love, and it's bringing it all to you in this web of circumstance. And you are literally living a completely different reality because of that. And this is being asked of us to anchor our light, because what's happening in the world, regardless of who's in office, regardless of anything, is that we are in the midst of a huge shift. And this shift is asking us to embody more of our divinity and to bridge the heavenly earthly realms through our consciousness, and to shift out of an old paradigm in which we see ourselves as separate or small or powerless or victim, into a state of empowerment, right? That's the journey of ascension. It's an embodied journey in which you come out of those victim states of I'm just a physical being, I'm powerless, I have no choice, this is the way it is, this is what I've been told, this is how it's always been, giving our authority away to other people, particularly, let's say in office, right? We do not actually have to give our power away to other people. And we are in the midst of moving out of, there's a little astrology here, Pluto in Capricorn for a very long time, into Pluto in Aquarius. Now, Aquarius is all about interconnection, working together, community. We're moving out of Pluto in Capricorn, which has been a lot about karma and healing a lot of that karma. And what this shift signifies to me, and I'm not an astrology expert by any means, is that part of what we're being asked to do, even more so, astrologically speaking, is sovereignty, which is, okay, we no longer as a collective or as an individual, because the individual is the collective, you make up the collective. The collective is simply individuals, right? Together. We no longer allow one external authority to be our authority. We are all our own authority. And we're being clearly asked to do that right now. To become our own authority, to be sovereign, and no longer think that one person or one government decision or one external circumstance is going to be the thing that dictates your life, because you are the one in charge. You are the one in authority. You have the power over your own life. And yes, we are affected by external circumstance. Of course we are. It's how we respond to it, the vision we have of it, the perception, our internal experience related to that, that dictates how it actually affects us and how we respond. I'm speaking broadly today. I'll probably have episodes of more specific topics, but I'm speaking broadly today because in order to anchor your light, it is essential that you stop looking to the external world to tell you it's okay to be you, to tell you it's safe to be you, to tell you that you're allowed or not allowed to do something. And you start looking to your internal world, you connect with your soul essence, you connect with your soul truth, you connect with your soul wisdom. And as you develop that deep, intimate relationship with your internal world, you start, part of the process is you start releasing what is not in the light, right? The unconscious parts, by bringing them to consciousness. You start releasing the ego parts. You start releasing the fear-based parts. You start releasing the inherited belief systems and the absorbed social conditioning, and you start releasing the I can'ts, I'm not allowed. You start releasing all of that internally as you're aligning to this greater power that you are. And as you do so, you then make choices from that internal knowing, not based on what you're told to do, not based on the external limitations that other people see. You make choices from a very different place. I wouldn't, for example, be on the spiritual pilgrimage to Europe if I were making choices from a rational, logical place. But my soul called me here, has been calling me to each of these locations for many years. And then the timing was right, and I said yes, and here I am. Logically, I could find a million reasons why it wasn't the logical thing to do. But I'm not here to live logically. I'm here to follow my soul's truth, regardless of where that takes me. Because soul union is the most important thing to me. Because soul union is one, how I ascend. Soul union is what gives me freedom. Soul union is what gives me peace. Soul union is what gives me joy. And none of that is contingent on what anybody else does or thinks, or how the rest of the world is living, or what's happening in the news, or what's happening in politics. None of that is affected. What is affected is my capacity to enjoy life because I saw this actually I'll speak about Pompeii for a second, in a mural today. In ancient Pompeii, there's this mural of the Dionysus mysteries. And I also visited Eleusis, or Elphisina in Greek. That is, or was, the site of the Dionysus mysteries, their initiation rites. And these go back to 5th, 6th century BC. So we're talking 3,000 years ago, basically. And in this particular mural, which I'm not sure if, ancient Pompeii was from 500 BC through 79 AD, when the volcano erupted and preserved what we now see as the city in ash and gases from the volcano. I'm not sure exactly when this mural was put on this wall. So if it was from, the 5th century through 79 AD, I'm not sure. However, in this particular mural, what was clear is that they were showing this wedding between Dionysus and Ariadne. And then afterwards, they were pulling the kind of a skirt, the cloth off of a man to expose his lingam, I'll say, his phallus. And that represented, you can see them in various places in stone here in ancient Pompeii. That was one symbol of the life-giving power of nature, right? It wasn't necessarily a sexual symbol. We tend to associate sexual organ symbols with sex, but the reality is that our sexual organs are so much more for than just sex, right? And so, but sex is life-giving, right? You have sex, you can create life. And so it was to show the power of life. And then right after that is a woman dancing naked. And for me, one of the things that this symbolizes is this capacity to, the marriage between Dionysus and Ariadne is the marriage between the human and the divine. Recognizing the life-giving power of nature creates ecstasy, creates joy, creates freedom, right? Because you know that merging of the human and the divine, that recognition of the soul light within you and radiating and anchoring that light is what gives you the capacity to fully enjoy life, is what gives you that ecstasy, right? That so many people seek through external things. It's actually the merging of the human and the divine that brings that, right? And they understood this. And this is also what I saw at the temples in Malta, because these temples, which the last episode talks more about the history of these temples, the timing of these temples, but these temples are 6,500 years old, at least 6,500 years old. And there were these megalithic stones. Megalithic basically means really big stones. And some were 1,000 pounds, some were 15,000 pounds. They still don't understand how they actually created these megalithic temples. They have theories, but we don't really know, right? Was it through the use of sound? Was it through the use of magic? Was it through the use of ritual? Was it through use of physical labor? We don't know. But they built these megalithic temples, and they all have a very similar shape. But some of them are aligned to the sun for the equinox and the solstice. Several of them even have holes in the stones that the sun could penetrate through and go straight into certain rooms. There's one stone block that seems to have etched in it the star system Pleiades, right? They were connected to the stars. They were connected to the solar system. They were connected. They understood that they needed to anchor their light onto Earth, and that through that anchoring of their light onto Earth, they could create miracles such as these megalithic temples, and they could achieve and experience so much more than was possible with the human mind alone. Do we have physical evidence that these civilizations from 6,500 years ago were, say, for example, star beings? No. I have a theory. There are lots of theories out there that they were. connected to something so much more, right? And I also wonder why it's so far-fetched for us to believe that some of these ancient civilizations, which had way more knowledge and power and wisdom than we seem to sometimes today, right? Even though we like to think that they were very primitive, that's what we're taught growing up, at least I was. Why is it so far-fetched to believe that star beings landed on this planet and started civilizations, right? I know there are a lot of books and theories out there around that, but why is it so far-fetched? Why is it so weird to think about? If we recognize that we are divine, we are star beings, perhaps in form. I know I am. You probably are too. Then why is it so far-fetched for us to believe that that was the beginning of civilization on Earth? Or at least part of it. And why is it so far-fetched to believe that, well, if we are star beings, if we have this connection to the solar system, we can use that knowledge. We can use that frequency. We can use that vibration. We can use that sound to create our physical reality. Why is that so far-fetched? What if we actually started to shift our thinking into that? What if we actually started to think, okay, so instead of just like this daily life, right, this daily grind, living as a human being, thinking with my mind, using reason, what if I started to connect to something much deeper inside of me, my soul, oh, my divinity? Oh, yeah, that. Well, usually first stage is getting through the worthiness stage, right? Am I even worthy enough of being that? That was a huge thing for me for many years. Am I worthy of that? Because I am in contact with star beings. That's why I channel light language, right? It's the language of the stars. And one of the first that I came into contact was an embodied vision of Isis, the Egyptian queen of heaven and earth. There's actually a temple to her here in ancient Pompeii. And I believe that she was connected to the star system of Sirius, which I believe is very connected to the temples in Malta. And when she came to me in embodied vision, I didn't really know who she was at the time, but she led me on an initiation, a very long, dark underworld journey initiation. And throughout that, I kept wanting to revere her, to become like her. And she kept making it clear to me that it was me recognizing my own God nature that was the path of the initiation, not putting her above me. So that's what we tend to do, right? In this world, that's what we're told to do. Put the God above you, literally above you, up in the sky, and then you're separate from it. But to anchor your light is you remembering that you're not actually separate and that you are that. It is in you. It is in all things. And what if you lived your life as that? What if you released your grip on this thing will make me safe? This person gets in office, I am safe. If this thing happens, I am safe. Oh, I can only do that if I have XYZ. What if you released your grip on all those external things and you actually let your soul guide your life? What if you stopped looking for the external world to tell you that things are going well and you felt more into your internal truth and you lived from that and you made decisions based on your internal truth and knowing, because you could literally lift yourself into a different frequency and way of being? It wasn't so limited by what other people saw because they haven't lifted themselves into a different frequency yet. Again, I know I'm speaking in broad terms today, but I just want you to breathe into some of these possibilities. I was a criminal prosecutor and lawyer for 7 years. I know that these could sound a little far-fetched to the mental mind. And I'm asking you not to listen with your mental mind. I'm asking you to simply be curious and open and just feel what resonates, what doesn't. Because we are being asked collectively to anchor our light, which means to remember our divinity in embodied form here on this planet. That is what we're moving into specifically so that we can create new realities. And the old realities are crumbling for a reason. And by the old reality crumbling, what does that actually mean? It means things seem to be falling apart when actually they're in the midst of rebuilding themselves. So we stop depending on external power structures and external authority structures and become our own authority. That might be actually what's happening. It's beautiful that that's happening. We need that to happen because unfortunately, most people don't wake up unless there's a reason to. It's a lot easier to be comfortable and to continue believing everything you're told as long as everything is safe and everything is good. Things are happening for a reason. And so you can look at what is it and how is it that you can connect deeper to the light of your soul, amplify this light, use this light to anchor the truth of your divinity in every moment, regardless of what is happening around you, and then use the truth of your divinity to direct your choices, your actions, your words, your behavior, so that you have a ripple effect on humanity, which creates much bigger change than one person could ever do in office, for example, because you're literally grading light into the collective grid and ascending your own soul into higher states of consciousness, which shifts you into a different reality. Doesn't take away your humanity. Your humanity is an essential part of being human, but it shifts your entire experience of your humanity to a very different perspective of life and how you live it. And if you're not sure how to do that, one, I'm here for support. I do one-on-one guidance with people. But also, I have an activation that is literally only $22, extremely easy to access on my website. That's about anchoring the light of your divinity, recorded based on my experience at the temples of Malta, which is helping to connect you to your star nature, to your galactic nature, also into your why of being here on this planet. Because even though this isn't something I've talked a lot about on the podcast before, I think it's time we start talking more and more about our own galactic nature. It's time we start talking more and more about the fact that we are not just human physical beings. We are more than that. I think it's time we start having greater conversations around our power that is multidimensional. Because it's the path to freedom. So take it or leave it, see what resonates, see what doesn't. And if you want that support in activating the light of your divinity, you can go to thepathtosovereignty.com. I'll put the link in the show notes below as well for you to access that Malta activation. Just go to Soul Healing Activations. It's $22 for the group activation. And there's not only an introduction, but suggestions for how to really embody this in your life, because that's the point, right? You live this way, you shift out of an old experience into a new. You live this way. Okay, I'll see you next time to talk more about Pompeii and sacred sexuality. Lots of love.